Hey everyone, Miff here, and welcome back to my Completionist playthrough of Icewind Dale. Purist style, insane difficulty, you know what's up. Anyway, before we leave Hrothgar's house and resume our adventures, there's a few remarks I wanted to make. In the last episode, I wanted to highlight the fact that, even though in the conversation it was said that there were many curiosities lying around, unfortunately, we can't get any more detailed descriptions of them, as the only three elements we can inspect in this place are the trophies mounted on the wall. And there are some things that clearly stand out without any additional description, like this rug, I guess, made from the hide of what's likely a displacer beast with its 6 legs and 2 tentacles. A cool and classic D&D monster that's unfortunately absent in the Infinity Engine games. And I don't want to accuse Hrothgar of being wasteful, but hides of these creatures are a precious material used in the creation of magical items. Most notably for us, I guess, the Cloaks of Displacement we know already from Baldur's Gate. But maybe it was a spare part without the magical properties and could serve better as part of the home decor, adding to the cozy atmosphere at the fireplace. Also, speaking of those trophies, there was a comment that rightly pointed out that the description of the central one fits a Gorgon better than a Minotaur. And I agree, of course. That was a good point. And in general, as always, thank you for all the comments, questions, reminders, all that. Always feel free to post and share your thoughts if you'd like. But anyway, what we just discussed means we won't be able to match too many of Hrothgar's monster-slaying achievements, as Displacer Beasts or Illithids or Gorgons are nowhere to be found in this game. We'll only have a chance to slay some invisible stalkers later on, and Minotaurs if you want to count them in. But then on the other hand, there will of course be plenty of other creatures for us to defeat, so no worries there. We will make our own achievements and take our own trophies. And finally, there wasn't a great time to mention it anywhere, but of course Hrothgar is not to be confused with H. Hrothgar, or Hrothgar Firehammer from the 5 Flagons in Baldur's Gate 2. Our Hrothgar is much more heroic than your Hrothgar, dear Athcatlans. But anyway, now we can leave. I hope I didn't forget anything else. And we will head west, because of course from that conversation with Hrothgar, we've learned that that messenger from Kuldahar collapsed at the door of the temple, and the priests here must have had a good chance to talk to him more and perhaps know some more details. Hrothgar, of course, pointed us to Everard, who might know something more about the troubles that plague Kuldahar. And so this will be an appropriate time to visit the Temple of Tempus, the god of battles here in East Haven. And there will be a lot to unpack here. First off, from some of the things we can't inspect for any additional descriptions, of course we have the prominent statue of Tempus atop his 2 war steeds, towering over everything else here in the temple. There are also banners with his holy symbol, that of a flaming sword. And what's interesting to mention here is that there was also a 3D interior artwork of this temple released as a promotional material for the game, showing the statue from the ground's perspective. And it's kind of reminiscent of the original videos in Baldur's Gate 1, showing certain places from the inside in a short 3D cutscene, if you remember those. But now, as for the things that we can inspect, first we have this glyph-worded door that was sealed by Tempus himself, restricting access to the chambers below. And then we will have some artifacts on display, mostly powerful armaments that belong to famed champions of the past. And here we have a shield that belonged to none other than Ihonen, who might have been a follower of Tempus, although the white sword emblazoned upon its surface is not flaming, so perhaps it was the dents and scratches that make it more difficult to see, and perhaps, you know, he wasn't exactly a worshipper of Tempus, but what kind of leads me to that trail to make that connection is what Elysia said in the conversation we've had with her, stating that fire-shaped steel ended the life of Ikasarat, perhaps referencing Ihonen's worship of Tempus. And also another interesting artifact is this one, another shield, but here we clearly have a flaming sword, a holy symbol of Tempus, engraved on its surface. But Mergeth here was of the Order of the Steel Fang, and that's an interesting militant order within the church, comprised of the most elite and experienced warriors, led by the veteran priests of Tempus, and tasked to undertake the most dangerous duties and missions. Although, what's a little funny is that it was founded a few decades after the events of Icewind Dale, about 70 years later, so they didn't exactly get their timing correct, because we are in the year 1281, and that order was founded in the mid-14th century, around the year 1350. And speaking of the timeline, just as I mentioned, the events of Baldur's Gate take place in the year 1368, so about 87 years later. And you will see that time period difference will manifest in a few areas, particularly with which gods are currently in power. There will be some that will have lost their godhood by the time Baldur's Gate rolls around, but I will point those things out when they show up later. Anyway, now we can also inspect the other artifacts here. I'll just leave their descriptions on the screen, and as always, remind you to feel free to pause at any time to read these descriptions in more detail on your own. But now we will move on to some conversations. And first we will speak to the acolyte, Accalia, initiate here at the Temple of Tempus. And here, immediately after the greeting, we already have a unique paladin dialogue option. This one. Because, of course, she speaks about how Tempus is revered a great deal in these parts. Also, it's the primary god worshipped by the barbarian tribes of Icewind Dale, who call him Tempus. We will learn much more about that in the expansion. But Accalia points out that there's a lot of conflict and violence here in the north, and people want to make sense out of it all. Hence their worship of Tempus, to give it more meaning, I suppose. And here the paladin can speak in this way. I suppose you could make sense out of it, but why not seek a spiritual anchor for hope instead of a gloomy explanation about mankind's warlike nature? The point is that it's not gloomy. It's not an end unto itself. Conflict, war, they are the means to an end. Tempus does not determine the merit of a cause. He simply measures the valor and dedication of those who are brave enough to fight, kill, and die for what they believe in. And here we can make an assessment on that philosophy and respond, of course. And I think Rintar will say this. You do have a point. I suppose I do practice what you preach. The battle between good and evil is as old as Aber Toril itself. However, I cannot revere conflict itself. Say itself one more time. Even if I rely on war to accomplish my goals, I certainly do not cherish the activity. And by the way, Aber Toril means cradle of life, and it was an ancient world before it was split into two separate ones, because now we are just on Toril. So yes, let's go with that follow-up. And of course, she will talk about everyone finding their own path through life, and some people feel right at home here, worshipping the Lord of Battles. And she mentioned in the conversation that she is a foreigner, an immigrant, and we can ask where she's from, and she will reveal that she is a fellow Neverwintian, same as Rintar, also arriving here from the Jewel of the North. And she will also mention that before Battle Lord Everard assumed his responsibilities here at the temple as the High Priest, there was Renfeld before him, before he was killed in a battle against the barbarians near Bryn Shander. And Renfeld, of course, was a name used by a guy we rescued in an ambush in Baldur's Gate 2 and delivered him to the Harpers in Accalia in order to launch that whole quest line over there. And then a similar name, of course, is also Renfield from Dracula, but let's not get carried away too far, I guess. Anyway, now we will stop speaking to her with Rintar, and we will approach with Galburin. Being quite curious, quite intrigued by this Lord of Battles, he will want to ask Accalia about certain parts of this worship, like the rituals here. And she will explain quite a few songs and rituals that are mostly revolving around the remembrance of great battles of the past and their heroes. And here, for any cleric, there's a special dialogue option that we can ask, aren't ceremonies for the dead more important for the Church of Miracle? Because indeed, at this time in Faerun's history, it is Miracle who is the reigning god of the dead. But she will point out that while these ceremonies are true, the foul god does them no honor. Tempus holds a special place in his heart for those who have died in battle, showing valor and passion. We celebrate their deaths to show respect for life given to battle. All right, sounds pretty good. Also, this leads me to a remark that Accalia is kind of easily offended, and you can bring her to a nasty response, I guess, in a couple of ways, where she will cut the conversation short and then will not want to speak to us again. There's a few places like that in her conversations where you can make her disposition towards us quite unfriendly. Anyway, we can ask about the battles celebrated here, and of course the major one is the Battle of Jared's Stone. I'll tell you more about it, but Everard prefers that any questions about it be directed to him. He has somewhat of a different perspective on the teachings than most. Ask him about it if you see him. By the way, before we come back to this, let's also explore the entirety of the rituals. And of course, as always, feel free to read about them in detail. It's quite interesting stuff. But then, when it comes to Everard, we can ask about him. Well, Everard is still adjusting to his position here. I think he'd much rather still be serving Tempus on the front lines, but his duty is to guard this holy site, the site of Jared's Stone. You should ask him about it. He knows more of the tale than I do. Of course, we know about the battle from Jared's Stone because it was the focal point of the whole cinematic intro to the game that some of us might have watched in the introductory episode. It was near the end. Maybe some of you survived until that point. But anyway, we can ask about Everard even more, that he's both a warrior and a priest. Yes, it is actually part of a simple truth that we Temperans believe. Conflict is all around us. Every man and woman has something that he or she believes in, which he or she will die to promote or preserve. Tempus tells us that we should live for something of importance. If we kill, if we die, the same. We preach that conflict and war are vital to mankind's existence. And yeah, that sounds reasonable enough. Of course, again, if we disagree, she will be kind of rude to us. But yes, it is inevitable. And then finally, we will also... Oh, don't go anywhere, Accalia. We'll also explore the barbarian route in the conversation, because here Asathi will be curious about these barbarian tribes. She will want to know more about these people living more in tune with nature, perhaps similarly to her own tribe, from where she hails from. But yes, it seems like the disposition of the barbarians towards the 10 towns, whom they see as intruders upon their lands, kind of changes from season to season. Sometimes they come into conflict, sometimes they can coexist peacefully. And basically, I've used Asathi here because this conversation response is only available to druids and rangers, pointing out that perhaps the tribe's anger is probably more out of cultural isolation than any actual threat. But yes, this will lead us to kind of a general outlook on life in Icewind Dale, which leads us to the same kind of tenets of Tempus. And we kind of exhausted all of what we could out of Accalia, I guess. One more point to make is that it is said that she joins the expedition, the one that Hrothgar is trying to put together, but obviously we cannot talk to her anymore about it. And also, a general remark for the conversations with both Accalia and Everard is that even though we are purists, we don't really care about that, but just something to mention is that the kit introduced by the Enhanced Edition, the Priest of Tempus, has a few unique lines in both of these conversations, but they are basically the same messages, but put in slightly different words. Like he will say like our rituals, or, I know the tenets of our faith. So lines slightly adapted to sound better, coming from a worshipper of Tempus, but ones that don't really unlock anything new. But anyway, now let's approach the chief priest here, old Everard, as mentioned by Hrothgar.
Hrothgar mentioned there were strangers in town. What is it you want?
I am Rintar. Are you the high priest of this temple?
Yes, I am Everard. Everard of Tempus, battle priest of the Lord of Battles. What brings you here?
And here we will have quite a few different conversation options, some that are unlocked because we have already talked about certain topics with other people, like this one directly references Accalia, telling us about Jared's stone. And also the messenger, this option is available because we've talked to Hrothgar about it. But generally, when it comes to these conversation options, there's a few general topics that we will arrive at in a few different ways. Like certain conversations just will lead you to the other topics, like asking about the expedition will inevitably lead us to talk about the messenger, or asking about the glyph-covered door will lead us to the story about the battle of, the events that led Jared to make that sacrifice of his. So I will explore this conversation to give us the maximum amount of lines that Everard can speak to us. And this is also why Rintar is not going to do the entirety of it. We will switch a little bit later on. And also, before we really explore all of this, I should mention that Everard has 2 potions of healing that can be pickpocketed. However, that would be far too dangerous in our situation, with no saving and reloading, so we will not attempt it at this point, but let me just mention that we will not forget about those healing potions. There will be something about that later in the game. But anyway, first let's use the unique paladin greeting here. There is a different line for clerics, and then for all the other classes that kind of ask about Tempus being the god of war, god of battles. But anyway, the paladin can say, "I come to show respect to your god and his worshippers, Everard. Still, there is not much battle to be had here in Easthaven, I hope."
War is but one of Tempus's aspects. Warriors, true warriors, worship him as well.
And this can lead into the scars of war that we could ask about directly, but there's a more appropriate point for that, so I will just ask about something else.
You are free to ask, traveler. I promise no answers.
Of course, the main thing we are interested in is the expedition that Hrothgar is putting together, so let's ask about that.
I have heard of it, yes. A messenger from Kuldahar visited the temple not long ago, and it has spurred Hrothgar to see what is happening in the north.
So yes, here we can ask about that messenger that will lead us exactly to the point where, that other conversation option would.
Yes, a man from Kuldahar found his way to our door, and he was dead by morning. He claimed he was a messenger from the Archdruid of Kuldahar.
What did he want?
The man spoke of disturbances in Kuldahar. His wounds prevented me from making any sense of his words. Perhaps Hrothgar understood more than I, for he's preparing an expedition.
So here, we can't really get to know of any specifics. Like Hrothgar sent us to Everard, Everard sends us back to Hrothgar. No one really knows anything too specific. Are you going on this expedition?
No, for my place is here. Were I invited, I would still not go. My injuries would only slow the expedition.
Your injuries? Were you wounded in battle?
These eyes have seen battle, yes. And my skin bears the mark of swords and axes. That was long ago. Now my place is here.
Why would you leave battle behind?
Because there are many ways one may serve one's god. I am of the Order of the Broken Blade. My duty is to watch this place.
Well, he seems a bit agitated, speaking about these things, as we will learn in just a few moments. And here, the Order of the Broken Blade is quite cool, and he will explain more about it. But here, this conversation option is a little bit more elaborate for paladins and clerics. Other classes just ask about the name, and paladins and clerics can also add they guard areas sacred to Tempus, correct? The members of the Order?
Yes, we were warriors. Wounded in battle, our injuries now keep us far from the front lines. Still, we are fit to guard holy sites to our lord.
This is a holy site?
It is sacred to Tempus, yes. It marks the field where the barbarian Jared gave up his life ages ago. He lies encased in stone beneath this temple.
All right, and we will take our leave here when it comes to Rintar, and we will continue the conversation with Nadimastria. She will be quite intrigued by these runes, sensing some power hiding beneath the floor of this temple, and will be curious about what kind of magical energies were contained here.
If I must...
Your journey has brought you to this temple again. What is it you want? You are free to ask, traveler. I promise no answers.
What's that glyph-covered door beneath the statue?
The door leads beneath the temple to the site of Jared's stone. It was sealed with glyphs of Tempus to prevent entry long ago.
And this will naturally lead us to the story about Jared's stone.
Jared was a shaman who lived long ago. He brought unity to the northern tribes and led them to victory against the army of Arachon, at the cost of his life.
How did he die?
Once Arachon saw his army routed by Jared and the northern tribes, he sought to bring the Hells to his aid. Arachon opened a gate to the lower plains.
And this is a unique conversation option only available to mages that will give us a bonus line from Everard. But demons? Arachon would have been damning himself.
Arachon was an archmage. Storms moved at his word. Legions worshipped him as a god. Such men would rather damn themselves than admit defeat.
And then we get back on track to the usual line of conversation. But if Arachon summoned demons to the battlefield, then the northern tribes would have been destroyed.
I do not believe that. Jared did. It is said that Tempus himself appeared to Jared upon the battlefield, and Jared took that as a sign. Jared believed Tempus was calling him to sacrifice himself for his people to ensure victory. And so he cast his body into the portal, his blood fusing it to stone. It lies entombed beneath the temple to this day.
You don't sound like you agree with Jared's choice.
Jared had no need to sacrifice himself. Tempus's appearance was a test of faith, proof Jared's people had already won the field that day. Jared failed his god and died a coward's death.
Ooh, Everard not giving Jared the honor he deserves for his noble sacrifice. But anyway, here we will have a general kind of remark about it. Paladins and clerics have one that is a little bit more elaborate about, Tempus perhaps being known to sometimes appear on the field of battle for that kind of sign. But anyway, as Nadimastre will say, are you sure his death was in vain? Jared did seal the port.
One dies for Tempus with a blade in one's hand, not by martyring oneself within the embrace of infernal magics. Jared's duty was to stand with his comrades, not cast himself to his death when the field was already theirs.
His sacrifice may have prevented other deaths, Everard.
Sacrifice? Let me say this of sacrifice, young one. Then we shall speak of this no more. Sacrifice is a death that has meaning. When it is in vain, it is not sacrifice. It is a waste. That is the lesson of Jared's stone.
Well, someone's sensitive about this particular topic. But anyway, continuing on. And this stone is buried beneath the temple?
Aye, a great stone disc that holds Jared's corpse for eternity. And so I watch and guard it in Tempus's name.
All right, cool. We got the full story from Everard's perspective, and of course at this point you can clearly see that he is bitter and jaded, struggling to come to terms with his current vocation, not only being forced to guard a temple instead of being on the front lines, but to make matters worse, a temple dedicated to a deed he doesn't even agree with. Because as you've heard, he doesn't support Jared's actions. But as you will see later, perhaps there's a greater divine plan at work here for Everard. Perhaps there's a purpose for him being here. And finally, as I always have to mention Baldur's Gate, I have to speak about Everard's items. And I use the plural form because the Icewind Dale vendor Joluv in Baldur's Gate 2 offered 2 items with his name, indicating the prominence of this character. And indeed, one of those items even being apparently a holy weapon of Tempus given to Everard. And I am purposefully not showing the Morningstar's description, not to spoil the fate of Everard, as he truly is an important presence in the story. And let's leave it at that for now. Now we can actually engage in the temple services, I guess.
Your journey has brought you to this temple again.
We've heard his line quite a few times now, so let's just peruse his goods. We can buy more containers. Here, as you can see, they are slightly cheaper than they were at Pomab's, and I will take them just to have more containers to nicely sort our stuff. And also, I will stock up on some potions of healing. They will never be as cheap as they are here. However, when it comes to buying them specifically and like stocking up on healing potions, it's not really a big deal because later on they will be 20% more expensive, but also we will get 20% more gold for gems and miscellaneous items. So of course, holding off on these items to get more gold for them matters more when it comes to all of the other stuff that will be available then. So we might want to hold off to have more gold to spend on different things. But when it comes to the potions of healing specifically, there's no need to like buy as many as you can here because they are, as cheap as they will ever be. Because, like I said, later on in the game, they will be proportionately more expensive, but in line with the increased income we will receive through other trades. But anyway, I will buy... We could afford 5, but I think I will take 4, just to leave ourselves a little bit of a financial cushion that we might need. We will see about that soon. But anyway, now we will get this potion case to Galburin, I think, and this scroll case as well. So this will be our like divine magic scroll case, and Nadimastra has the arcane magic one. And then we will have 2 different potion cases to sort our potion resources. Anyway, this is it for now when it comes to the Temple of Tempus. And now we've also seen on our way to Hrothgar's house a nice sign for the fishmonger, and we will visit him. We've also heard about the fishmonger Gaspar from his warehouse manager Churin, so we will just stop by to make a visit here, see if he perhaps needs help with something. Yes, so of course this is not his shop. He stores most of his goods that he trades in that warehouse. We can yet again ask about knucklehead trout and the bones known as scrimshaw. We can ask what exactly that is. Fancy name for carved bone. Since knucklehead trout are so rare, scrimshaw carvings made from their bones are particularly valuable. So of course that's a decent living to be making here in East Haven. But then he also talks about that he is in the middle of an important transaction. The town's food stores are running dangerously low. My warehouse foreman Churin tells me that there may not be enough food to last through the coming winter. I've arranged a trade with old Galloway up in Caerdinival that will keep our stomachs full well into next year. The caravan's due to arrive any day now. So Galloway Trading Company, we will learn more about them. Not only in the expansion to this game, but also in Icewind Dale 2, as a matter of fact. But of course, Hrothgar already told us about this caravan, and that's why we have this follow-up conversation option here, that we are actually tasked to find it, to look for it. And of course, he will encourage us to do so, even though he believes that it's just late and nothing dangerous happened to it. Also, even though it's not a part of the conversation, let's just say that Gaspar also mentioned to us that he's worried about his little son Damien, always venturing outside of East Haven, far away, despite what Gaspar warns him about, the dangers lurking in the vicinity. And he's just concerned about him, and so he will ask our adventuring party to maybe keep an eye out for him during our adventures, and this will concern Rintar quite a bit, so we will go immediately to the bridge outside of East Haven, passing by the Snowdrift Inn that we will visit later. And here indeed we will meet the young fellow, and I will actually drop this knucklehead trout. We will speak about this in a moment. But anyway, here's Damien shouting, "Help, monsters! Quick, we've got to go get Hrothgar. There are monsters in town. They almost ate me." Oh, slow down. What are you talking about? Yeah, a whole bunch of monsters. They came down to the shore while I was fishing. I dropped everything and ran when I saw them, but they didn't chase me. I thought they were going to eat me, but I guess they were just after my fish. And this is kind of a cool option. You best be telling the truth, kid. You know what happens to little boys who cry orc. But yeah, he says that they're ugly and mean with pointy teeth and green skins. Go see for yourself. Yeah, and of course he mentions that his dad told him not to go so far out to fish, but I can't help it. That's where I catch the big ones. He's gonna kill me when he finds out I've lost a day's catch. all because of those stupid monsters. So yeah, these brazen, insolent goblins encroaching on East Haven's territory, forcing this boy to drop his hard-earned fish in order to escape. We shall right this injustice. And if we had already that knucklehead trout little skeleton scrimshaw in our inventory, we would be able to offer it to him right away, but I think it works out better if we actually take back his fish from the goblins, take it from their cold, dead hands, because normally to accept his mission and not give it right away, we would have to say a little bit, kind of a mean thing to him that Rintar wouldn't say, that, he would send him to the bottom of the lake if he's lying. But yes, don't worry, little man, we will deal with these thieving monsters and get you your fish back. All right, so now we can take our fish back.
Ready. Done.
And yes, Damien, we know you can stop shouting. But yeah, this will be our first taste of real combat, as well as our first random drop that we will obtain from this fight. We know already that our opponents are going to be goblins, quite a large group of them actually, with 3 archers and 5 melee guys, so we will treat them seriously and use some of our remaining spells. And we have these abilities and spells to spare, because before we head out to look for that caravan we were tasked to find, we will rest and recharge, and we will change our spells and all that, so we have those available. We will pre-buff defensively a little bit using the innate ability of the Paladin, his protection from evil, which of course we've analyzed in the intro episode, but just to quickly recap, it lasts for a really long really long time, 24 turns in fact, and compared to the protection from evil from Baldur's Gate, this one also makes us immune to charm. But aside from that, it will give us that +2 bonus to armor class and saving throws when dealing with evil creatures' attacks, and goblins are indeed evil aligned, so this will work in our favor, improving Rintar's survivability. And for the same reason, we will use this shield spell on Nadimastria. We have this memorized because this was a mandatory memorization at the start of the game. When we create a specialist mage, they have to, of course, first off, know one of the spells from their specialization, and then they also have to have one memorized. So, of course, shield fulfilled that purpose for us. And it's the same exact spell we know from Baldur's Gate, with the exception of its duration, because in Baldur's Gate it would last for a round 1 hour, and here it's 5 rounds per level. So eventually we will be able to outlevel that Baldur's Gate duration, but of course for the first 9 levels it will last for quite a bit shorter. And of course this was to improve Nadimastria's armor class, especially against missile weapons. In case these archers want to switch target from Rintar and maybe focus her, we of course want her to be safe from their arrows. And then of course the spell also has the utility of making the wizard immune to any magical missiles, which is not only the level 1 magic missile spell, but also Mordenkainen's force missiles, a different spell available here in Icewind Dale. So let's use those abilities. Let's move a little bit closer. Let's activate our song already to encourage our party before the battle, and then we will have Rintar and Nadimastria being in the front. Let's wait for a few seconds so that Nadimastria can cast immediately, and let's move in with Rintar leading the way to get the attention of these goblins, but then Nadimastria will follow behind him to quickly get close and use her color spray spell, while Asathi will cast an Entangle kind of on the way of these goblins, because there's a ridge here between us and them, and they have to go all the way around. And basically those are going to be our 2 main spells. So to talk about Entangle, it isn't fundamentally different from how it worked in Baldur's Gate, but there are relevant changes to some of its mechanics. The most important one by far is the saving throw. In Baldur's Gate, the targets would make their save with a +3 bonus, while in Icewind Dale, it's just a standard save versus spell without any modifiers. So that is a great boost to the effectiveness of this spell, making it much more likely to succeed in its main purpose, which is to immobilize creatures in its area of effect. And as a countermeasure, it lost the -2 armor class debuff it would place on the entangled targets. But that's such a minor element, it doesn't really matter. Like, I will gladly take this amazing trade-off every single time. So as a result, Entangle will be more reliable in what we are actually using it for. And now, just as a reminder, this effect only keeps the enemies in place, reducing their movement to 0, essentially, but they retain control of their actions. So they can still attack, they can still cast spells and avoid our attacks. They will not be automatically hit. They are not disabled completely. So, it's mostly useful against melee enemies, but can still be used to slow down the advance of all kinds of opponents. And also, some big creatures are immune to this effect, as well as web, and this includes some obvious examples like giants, but also lizardmen, for instance. And finally, a difference from Baldur's Gate that's not exclusive to just Entangle, but this will be our first spell to discuss it, is that quite a few spells in Icewind Dale don't have the travel time that was inherent to their usage in Baldur's Gate. Because how it would normally work in Baldur's Gate is that after successfully finishing a cast, there would be a spell orb flying to the location we specified with our cursor, and only after reaching it, it would explode and create the actual spell effect. And in Icewind Dale, quite a few of those spells happen directly after a slight delay without any projectile like that. So they are that much quicker to apply their effects in combat. And that's a significant change for us, but also our opponents, because their spells home in on a selected party member of ours, and in Baldur's Gate it's possible to then run away and guide that orb to explode somewhere more convenient for us, and here it's much less doable. But anyway, Entangle, not a new spell, but still another improvement to the level 1 arsenal of the Druid. And now Color Spray is going to be an entirely different spell from its Baldur's Gate equivalent, where it was basically a worse sleep, because it had the same limitation that sleep has, that in Baldur's Gate it would be ineffective for any targets of level 5 or higher, and of course it would still retain its usual disadvantages, which are the fact that it's not a party-friendly spell, and it is trickier to aim than most. But here it has its own uniqueness. It offers us 3 good effects, and it remains useful for the whole game. This spell will always take into account the relation between the level of the caster and the level of the target, and depending on that, it will be decided whether the target can even save, and then which effect will be applied to it. And as for them, if the creatures are lower level or equal to the caster, they are going to be knocked unconscious or put to sleep for 5 rounds. If they are 1 or 2 levels higher than the wizard, they are blinded for 3 rounds. And if they are 3 or more levels higher, they will be stunned for 1 round. So of course those are all really good beneficial effects, even if they will not last for that long. But also what is directly stated here, another really good element of Color Spray that makes it stand out, among the spells that knock the opponents unconscious or put them into that sleep status effect, most of such spells in Icewind Dale work in such a way that when those creatures are put to sleep, when they receive damage, they will immediately wake up and stand up and regain control and will be able to, avoid attacks again and make actions of their own. But Color Spray is notably different in that lineup, because they will not awaken when struck. They will be completely disabled for those 5 rounds. So this makes it, so much better when it comes to those spells. Of course, even if they are going to awaken when it comes to these other means of disabling them, of course that's still useful for the purposes of crowd control, and you can still line up a good attack coming from a couple of characters to automatically hit once, but then of course as soon as they receive damage they will stand up, and that effect will be lost. But here this is just such a great spell. Of course, it still has its downside of not being party-friendly and, kind of tricky to aim. You have to get some practice in to get a feel of how it actually works, because the colorful particles that it will send out are not a precise indication at all. They will basically travel a far distance, but it's only an animation. They don't really work outside of their specified range. But anyway, we will use color spray here on those archers. Here is also a Goblin Elite, and he holds our random drop that we will speak about in a moment. And here are the 3 archers, the 5 melee guys starting their trek outside. Here we will also switch to some ranged weapons on our combatants. And we will approach closer. And yes, let's... Whoa! Did I... Oh yeah, I switched to her darts. That's why she lost the order to actually cast the spell. And that perhaps was why Hrothgar received some damage. Alright, that was only 4 damage, so we can actually cure it entirely with his Cure Disease, because that ability heals for 5 hit points. Alright, so he is fully ready to combat the creatures, and I think I also did the same when it comes to that Entangle for Asathi, so clearly rusty as heck gameplay. And kind of... well, I'll try to improve later, but anyway, since these targets are disabled and will not wake up, we can even use such a wimpy combatant as Nadimastria with her awful 24 Thaco, because these monsters that are completely disabled will be automatically hit with all of her dart throws, except for a critical miss. So except for a roll of 1, she will hit with all of her attacks. She is boosted by that Bard's Song, adding +1 damage to her attacks. So even though darts, of course, deal minimal damage, they will deal a little bit more. And in the meantime, she can, attack these disabled targets to start killing them. And we will use our other combatants to attack these goblins, who, of course, will retain their ability to avoid our attacks, even if they get entangled. And now, of course, because I messed up that Entangle... Okay, here they go. The Entangle will be in effect for these other guys coming from the back. Alright, Nadimastria managed to already kill a guy. Let's send her to attack the Elite now. And here we'll have to go into physical combat against this Goblin. Alright, he is already down. Let's target these guys further away. I don't think I will spend those precious thrown axes yet on Hrothgar. Let's just focus on Galburin, Bray, and Asathi, making their ranged attacks. Alright, they took out another guy. Of course, Asathi needs to come closer because darts have quite a short range, but she will still, of course, be far enough away not to get attacked directly by these melee guys. Nadimastria dealt with another guy. Let's continue attacking the entangled foes. Alright, Nadimastria is on a killing spree. And... boom! Alright, we triumph against our enemies in our first real battle of this playthrough. Now, this guy, the Goblin Elite, has our first random drop, and he's going to have 1 out of 4 possible items, and those are... I think I will talk about them in order of what would be best for us. So first of these items can be a Splint Mail, which is the best financially, because that would give us an armor for Galburin that I didn't buy, hoping for this outcome here in the random drop, although we already see it's not going to be that, because it would have a different icon, his loot on the ground. But anyway, that would allow us to save more than 100 gold. So that's the most financially viable option. Then the second possible drop is a Potion of Healing, which is always nice to add to our supplies, and this saves here, with our charisma and with the prices here, it's 67 gold. The base price for a Potion of Healing here is 75, but of course we have that 10% discount. And then the other 2 drops are high quality weapons, so non-magical weapons with that +1 Thaco bonus. The first one is a Morning Star, which would still be useful for Hrothgar to give him a nice crushing damage option for a little bit later. Once we need it in the next chapter, there will be a lot of skeletons that are the most responsive to crushing damage. So this would be a nice starting weapon for him, because of course he will get that second proficiency point at level 3, which will happen at that point. And of course he will by that time be specialized with Morning Stars, so that will be a nice weapon for him. And the fourth and clearly the worst drop is a high quality dagger that we've already managed to obtain 2 of those, and of course it's the least you know, it's the least powerful drop. I'll just teleport Rintar on the other side, not to have to go through this entanglement. And, you know, get stuck in there if he fails his saving throw. But yes, there's not much of the map left to explore here, and now you can see how they had to go the other way around. But yes, let's see what he... Of course, it's the high-quality dagger. All right, I see what you're doing, game. Oh, I see how you're going to play. Oh, man. Okay, high-quality dagger number 3, basically, because, you know, we have a high-quality dagger here on Bray, and of course Absol's dagger is basically the same thing. It's even worth the same amount of gold, which is 5 gold. Anyway, also quick loot is going to shine quite a bit in this game. Also, that elite goblin had the scrimshaw remains of that fish. They well, they didn't take it from Damien, but you know, that was his fish to start out with. All right, anyway. Rintar is of course going to be encumbered, but I did take all of those weapons because they will be worth a couple of pieces of gold. I guess you can keep that. And this high quality dagger, I think we will sell this as well. So let our strong man with 15 strength, Galburin, hold that. All those weapons. All right, let's teleport Rintar back. So here, of course, Control J is the console command that I will sometimes use. It's mostly to, you know, backtrack to like faraway destinations on the map, like I explained in the intro video, but also to this, like if Rintar got stuck in this entangle, you know, it would just waste our time. And here, of course, with it, I'm not skipping any battles. I'm not doing anything, you know, unintended, just saving up some time of ours. Anyway, here when we speak to Damien, we can actually withhold the fish and even refuse to give him that fish. He will not have any additional reward for us. But then if we do so and speak to Gaspar, he will actually call us thieves, you know, because that wouldn't be too heroic, taking, you know, a little boy's fish. So, of course, we will give him back that fish, or at least what is left of it. And he will be very satisfied because, as always, it's not about the meat of these fish, but the actual scrimshaw. All right, and we get the standard 1200 experience for finishing that epic quest, and as a result, Galburin was able to level up. All right, so of course, as a cleric, he rolls from a 1d8 hit point roll, and since he has 15 constitution, he will get a +1 HP bonus. So essentially, from 2 to 9 hit points he will receive in this level up. So, well, let's see, which one will it be? Additional hit points gained 2. Bravo, game! Like, it clearly does everything it has up its sleeve, everything in its power to make it like as difficult for us as is humanly possible. All right, you know, maybe the AI overlords are clearly upon us, you know, and just will ensure the doom of humanity, I guess. Anyway, a static benefit, of course, is another memorization slot for level 1, of course, and that's about it for this level up. And yes, now he has a whopping 11 hit points. All right. All right, well, I guess we'll have to now visit the inn to recover from that. And this will be a nice place to stop for this episode. We will just place them inside to enjoy a more cozy atmosphere and a warmer temperature, I'm sure. But yes, we will explore this inn in the next episode, and then we will rest and actually engage in our first proper adventure. So, I thank you for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.